The Black Death was one of history's greatest diseases. In just a span of 4 years, it killed 1/3 of Europe's population, almost 20 million people. It was a horrible and infectious disease. People who got it were dead between 3 and 5 days, and there was no cure for it. It was widely believed that this plague had originated in Asia and had made its way to Europe through merchant ships. The disease had spread by rats, but the real disease was carried by little fleas living on the rats. The flea carried a bacteria known as Yersinia pestis. Fleas that were infected would feed off of rats. When the rats died, however, the fleas looked for more food sources: humans.
My king, the plague has reached England and thousands are dying.
How did it ever reach us?
There's no way of telling, but I must warn you of its danger.
How could this possibly happen? I was just beginning to plan my favorite daughter Joanne's wedding.
It is a tragedy, my king, but we must focus on stopping the spread of the plague.
Well, let me be peasant while I think. I'm not informed, no nobility. Many Europeans had heard of a great pestilence sweeping through Asia. In October of 1347, 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. When the authorities came, they saw a majority of the sailors dead. The few that were alive were incredibly sick. They had black boils that oozed blood and pus. The Sicilian authorities referred to them as death ships and ordered them to get out of the harbor before things got worse. Unfortunately, it was too late. The plague had already begun spreading. In men and women alike, at the beginning of the malady, certain swellings either on the groin or under the armpits waxed to the bigness of a common apple. Others to the size of an egg, some more and some less, and these vulgar named plague boils. The Black Death surprisingly had positive outcomes, especially for the serfs. Knights were dying, and the land where the serfs were working was unprotected, and they were free to leave to the cities. Here they could ask for more pay in their jobs since there was almost no one to work. Churches back then always taught people how to live their lives. When the plague came along, people looked at it as a punishment from God. They went to the church for help and the cure, but the priests and bishops could not offer any help. From this, people started to question the church and lost its faith in its authority. This would eventually lead to the Reformation, as the church could not help them during this crisis. The symptoms of the Black Death were incredibly noticeable. At first, an infected person would experience high fevers combined with aching limbs and fatigue. Sounds just like a common cold, right? Well, the real symptoms were where it really gets its name from. The lymph nodes in the neck, armpits, and groins would swell and turn black. Patients, after a while, could not even move or get out of bed, where their fevers would go incredibly high. In just a matter of a couple days, their buboes would turn to the size of an egg or an apple. This would be so incredibly painful that the infected would start to vomit blood. They are most likely not going to survive. Now, they did have people to treat this. The villages paid 4 plague doctors to do treatments. These treatments were called bloodletting, where the doctors would put leeches and toads on the back of people's necks to suck out all the bad blood. This, unfortunately, was extremely ineffective.
Thank you for coming, doctor. No problem. I treat all infected by the plague. How long has she been sick?
Well, a couple days, but are you sure she'll be okay?
She doesn't look great. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll begin my examination. She seems to have a few buboes and a few patches of gangrenous skin. She doesn't look great.
What can you do?
Well, I can use leeches to bloodlet her and apply a toad to the back of her neck to get rid of the bad blood.
Well, are you sure that's gonna work?
It's the only thing I can do.
Thank you, Doc. People thought of the plague as a punishment from God. They thought that the only way to survive the plague was to win God's forgiveness. Thousands of Jews were massacred in 1308 to 1349 because of this. People went to drastic measures to win his forgiveness. This worried the Pope, who had begun to usurp, seen as a bad part of history. 1/3 of Europe's population had died out because of it. However, good things happened too. Feudalism, which was the government style during that time, had died out. Many peasants and serfs were free to leave and start a new part of their lives in the cities. There, they could ask for higher wages and were treated better. The plague also helped people with thinking for themselves. If it wasn't for their loss of faith in the church, people would not be thinking of their own ideas. This had eventually led to a Reformation where people thought of their own ideas. The plague had also led to many modern-day scientific discoveries. This goes for medicine mostly. Antibiotics have been made to treat people with this plague, although not many people catch it. The plague is still not curable, unfortunately. However, the 1340s were not the only time the bubonic plague had broken out. There have been numerous times in history where the plague had broken out. There's no saying when the next outbreak could be.